Marginal, not moderate.
We might as well get started here. Thank you all for attending. The panel is called "What is Happening at Conventions: Small Homegrown Cons versus the Big Ones." Obviously, we're going to sit here and talk a little bit about the changing face of fandom and what we're facing as fan with the conventions. So, I'm Bruce Wiley. I've been a sci-fi fan all my life. I've been an organized fandom, or as close as organized as you can get, since the late 70s.
Come on in.
Come on in!
Door's not open.
I think that was just somebody checking to make sure we were here.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're people, yeek! But I've been on the TusCon committee since TusCon 6. And we're at 43 now, so that gives you an idea how long I've been doing this. So, yeah, I've seen the shift of the paradigm in conventions growing and growing.
I'm Lawrence Fuller, and I'm a big sci-fi fan. I'm more of a nerd than a geek. So if you ask me,
okay.
it's like I can tell you I love this show and I love that show, but any episodes and people that are in it, no, I can't tell you that. But I do love watching it. I do love reading it. And I've been to the Phoenix Comic-Con twice. I was a moderator up there for Tony Amendola and Aaron Gray. I haven't been to TCC yet, but we did do the signs for TCC, the shop that I work for. And I was actually hoping I would be on the panel for the sci-fi in theater, because that's an interesting thing to talk about, having this sci-fi. But anyway, Tucson is a small town, and as small as it is, TCC is growing. I've never been to, this is my first time at TusCon. Thank you, Fred and Darcy, for inviting me. And I'm happy to be here, and I would like to see this grow as well. I'm sure a lot of people would like to see it grow.
Maybe not.
We'll need to talk.
We'll talk about that. That actually will be one of the topics we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm Scott Glener. I do the programming I'm one of the people that do the programming for TusCon. We're a lot bigger than it used to be. There used to be just one person, but no, I'm one of the people that. So it's my fault that you're here, and it's my fault that you're not on the theater panel.
No, it's okay. I'm on the actor one tomorrow. So.
Okay. I was jumped into TusCon by this guy 35 years ago. Jumped in being the appropriate term because he volunteered me for security.
That's true.
I've done a lot of stuff for here, of course. I've done moderating for Tucson Festival of Books. I've done moderating for Phoenix Comic-Con. I've been to a lot of conventions regionally, a couple back east. Not that recently since the change hit, but I'm in some ways actually a process geek. So, seeing these changes in conventions is actually one of the things that I'm interested in, and seeing the change in fandom is also something that I'm interested in.
I'm Marty Ketola. I'm a local filmmaker. I've made about 3 micro-budget films, and I was also a host on public access television for 25 years before they shut that down last year. I've been to quite a few conventions over the past 10 years, all in Arizona. I've been here a couple times when we were back over by I-10. I've done Tucson Comic-Con a couple times. That one just keeps growing and growing. I'm wondering where they're going to put people. There's not really hotels downtown. Staying by the freeway
they're
may be
building,
scary.
They're building some.
That would be good. And one that I discovered earlier this year, which I think is my new favorite, is the Mad Monster Party up in Scottsdale. It's a horror science fiction convention. It is a very intimate.
Yeah,
little,
I thought they
little
canceled that.
thing. No, it was
Okay.
it was
Oh, good.
amazing this year. Next year they've already started
Yeah?
planning for it.
Wow.
Good.
I think Sarah Jane Karloff was at that. I met her not too long ago. But yeah,
Nice.
very cool.
Okay, so the topic for the discussion was what's happening to conventions, small cons and big cons. Well, the big cons are getting huge.
Mhm.
Almost unmanageable.
Salt Lake was 150,000, I think, and surpassed San Diego Comic-Con as the biggest Comic-Con in the country.
I didn't know that.
150 or 175,000. But
Wow.
it surpassed San Diego. San Diego has deliberately limited their membership and doesn't want to grow anymore. They were, and to give you an indication of how big San Diego Comic-Con was, they told the NFL to fuck off.
And managed.
So when the NFL comes a calling and they go, no, we're good. That'll give you an indication of just how much power, clout, and people that they actually have going through it.
Now, one thing I will argue about is why the hell are they calling them Comic Cons when they really don't have anything to do with comics anymore?
Yeah,
Back in the old days,
comics.
San Diego Comic Con was a comic book literary convention.
Yeah.
Turns to
Okay.
a generic term.
They should go back to the old.
But that's also a
science.
success.
Remember that there is also something called a comic book movie, just as there used to be
Yeah.
westerns. Comic book is a genre that talks about more than just the 42 pages in a typical comic book. You know, the 38 page 4-color comic book. Although now comics are also a lot more than just 48 page 4-color comic books
And
as
more than a
well.
couple of bucks per piece. Remember they find it for 12 cents.
Um,
But anyway, I'm old.
But yes, the Comic Cons, which San Diego wants to say that they own the rights to call something a Comic Con.
Oh yeah.
It's currently in the courts,
No,
and
it is.
San Diego Comic Con is losing so badly they're trying to stall it off and get people to just, give us $1 and drop the suit. From what I've heard. Okay.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's you're absolutely right because people have now, other Comic Cons
Mhm.
have to change the name to comma hyphen con.
con.
Yeah, or space. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually have a feeling that they're going to wind up losing that one just because it wasn't an original name. They weren't the first people to use it.
The Xerox principle.
The-
Aspirin.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or like podcasts.
Or podcasts.
Suing over the word
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
Very much so.
So
That's why Sci-Fi Channel changed to Sufi.
Correct.
So they could copyright.
Copyright the terms because they couldn't copyright
Right.
sci-fi.
and there's also some branding stuff and
Sucks.
there was also some branding stuff around it, so that way they could be unique. Although it was really interesting, the second they changed their name, they also stopped actually creating sci-fi. But
And
What do you mean the
WWE
wrestling?
Well,
that
There's
Um,
a certain amount of fiction involved, okay? Please.
yes,
Well, I know
but
the
no
fiction, but,
science.
Physics.
Yeah, what's the science?
Physics.
Hey,
I am actually sometimes a fan of punchy
Well,
ballet.
that's it. They needed the actors for Sharknado.
Okay. But on the Sci-Fi Channel, not quite so much.
Yeah.
But things are, New York had 100,000, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Every major metropolitan city is basically trying to get a ConCom because it fills convention centers. And very few things actually fill convention centers these days. And so producers, some with good intentions, some of them just looking for the money. There are some that are good,
Yeah.
even some of the for-profit ones For instance, Phoenix is a for-profit, but the guy who runs it is a fan, and really, in addition to trying to make his livelihood off of it, does want to grow the community, does want to provide a space for the fans, does want to, and the big ones also have a very different purpose than we do, and hopefully they will admit it. But they are entertainment. It would be impossible for any convention less than 50,000 to bring in the names that they're able to bring in. If you're talking about bringing in John Barrowman,
I will disagree with you on one thing, but we'll talk about that one.
Okay. If you're talking about bringing in, an entire cast of either Doctor Who or Babylon 5 or Supernatural or, any of these really big event things, you could possibly do a specific series event, like there was a High Chaparral Bonanza convention here in town last year.
High Chaparral.
There was literally a High Chaparral convention down in Old Tucson last year, and people who liked the show came in, and it was a weekend, and
with the surviving cast there.
Had the surviving cast there, but if you want to bring in the really big names, okay, you need a lot of people to generate the money. It's also a very good way for mid-list actors who have done science fiction shows and are having problems finding other jobs because they're stereotyped as that character to be able to make money. Okay? We at TusCon could not do that and kind of do not want to do that because, again, we only have 500 people. We can't have a 75-person photo booth line for somebody at somewhere at $50 a clip.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it's an exclusive. I like that. In fact, I like the exclusivity of this con.
Mm-hmm.
And also like that you don't call it a Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, we were here first.
Well, yeah.
Well, we're here first because before we had the internet and other ways to communicate, the only way you get to exchange what you liked in movies and books is come into a room and change them hand to hand.
Right.
Now, the new convention, they're doing it the same way. They're saying bringing in the big names.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting a chance to do a face-to-face with characters they've seen online only.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they're doing it, the same focus, but with a different focal point.
Right.
They're also getting a lot of Hollywood PR for new movies and properties.
They're getting right, and that's actually what the studios are getting. One of the reasons why San Diego Comic-Con has turned into a media convention is, of course, it's a really quick flight, and every star who has a major part in a film, as part of the contract for that film, is also obligated to do a certain amount of publicity and publicity days for that film. And by being able to go to San Diego Comic-Con, it is, one, actually less expensive for the movie, two, easier for the actor, and three, it really is unique.
It also gives you a real big bang for the advertising dollar.
Exactly.
You're going straight to your
YouTube
target
video.
audience.
Exactly.
Way early snippets.
And you get that immediate feedback of, wow, this is great, or, oh, why? And that can make or break a movie, right?
Yep. And there's a kind of second tier Comic-Con at which I actually would not put Phoenix in because I think they're one of the top level. They're actually bringing in international people. They're over 100,000. They're really well done.
Big.
They are big. It's not they're getting big. They just are big.
They are big, and then now they added the Fan Fest too.
Yeah, but there's the other cities that are trying to do the same thing, And a lot of them are having a lot of problems because there's enough conventions where people come to TusCon because they love it. Because they either know somebody who comes to TusCon or they've been coming to TusCon and they know people. Okay, when we get new people, and sometimes that includes panelists, it's because they know somebody who's able to reach out to them and say, this isn't like the big horror, the big huge cons. This is a nice, friendly atmosphere, We have Elizabeth Grayson this year. It's a great example. She is somebody that does the circuit, okay? She came here because Jeffrey Notkin worked with her. And she's doing a project on fans and fandom. And he said, hey, why don't you come down here? It's a lot more mellow. It's smaller, so you can actually meet people. And you can actually talk with people. And you won't get this huge, oh my God, crowd. Okay? Which is something I really like about TusCon. I mean, we are a lot more literary. We started off a lot more literary. That was a decision that we actually did to stay that way. And going back to we want to get bigger, we don't.
We don't.
Okay.
No, now I understand.
4 years ago, 3, 4, or 5 years ago, I'm bad with time, but we had Jim Butcher as our GOH.
3 years ago.
3 years ago? Okay. And at that point, we were going, oh my gosh, we don't know how many people might show up. And we went, okay, let's actually talk about what we want to be as a convention. Okay? And again, because, we're all fans, we've all gone to conventions. Okay? We actually put on a World Fantasy Con here in town. 2 of them. A lot of us go to World Horror Conventions. A lot of us go to the various different
Western cons,
NASFIX,
World Cons, etc.
World Cons, Condor in San Diego, Bubanacon in New Mexico,
Dragon Con
mm-hmm. in Atlanta for a big one. And technically, that's actually 5 separate cons.
Yeah.
But that's completely weird.
Well, it's Atlanta ways.
Yeah. Because Dragon Con is also very huge and is not in the Comic-Con category. And it's kind of hard to describe.
There's definitely overlap.
There's definitely quite a lot of overlap. But
Dragon Con started as a small convention and built to this mega...
and actually it kind of started as 5 small conventions.
Yeah, and just kind of grouped.
And it kind of grouped. It said, hey, if we do everything all on the same weekend, we'll have more purchasing power, we'll have more PR power, we'll have more,
It was just a good decision.
It was just a great decision, and now they closed downtown for them. It's also like Phoenix. They closed a big portion of downtown for the convention. Talk about nerds win,
It was so weird to see just a few years ago when they went to the Phoenix Convention Center. All surrounding restaurants and everything had no idea what the hell
Right.
it was.
Yeah.
And now they're totally in with it,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Their wait staff dresses up. They offer deals. Yeah.
Yeah, Cooperstown.
But even 9 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
Phoenix Comic Con was a lot.
Right. Well, it was in
It was in
Scottsdale, Mesa.
It was in
Yeah.
Mesa.
So we sat down and we said, okay, how large do we want to be, and how much do we want TusCon to change? And we basically came up with, well, anything more than 500 people, and it really just stops being TusCon. Now, at the time, we were starting our publicity machine, we were starting our Facebook, we were starting our Twitter. We hadn't really figured out how to do everything well. We wound up not selling out for Jim Butcher. Then we went through some other GOHs who, while absolutely incredible in my book, would not have the national draw that Jim did. And then, so getting George, we actually got George 5 years ago. Okay. In 38, we were, to be totally honest, really quick story. In 38, we were talking about bringing over, any of our old GOHs who were still alive and wanting to come in. So we said, we basically sent out an email blast to, at that time, 37 of the GOHs. Are you interested? Are you even available that weekend? 2, years in advance. And George was actually the only person to reply. And he said, no, I'm busy. I'm busy that weekend, and I'm very booked. The first time I would be able to make a convention, on that weekend would be 2016, 5 years from now. So, I was actually on the computer when that email popped up. I hit reply, YES. And then he sent back a very nice email that was very nicely worded. That was basically can you really make a commitment that fast for 5 years from now?
Yes.
Because I don't know how much, you guys do with conventions, but normally every convention, every year, it's kind of like new staff. We don't do it that way. I've been doing programming for several years now. I took a vacation for a couple of years. I was doing programming before that. He did a great job.
Thank you.
And they said, well, we're TusCon 38. We're going to be around for 43. I've been doing programming for several years. So there's a good chance that I'm going to be doing it then. And even if I'm not, whoever is doing programming would want you as their guest of honor. And that's
great.
Which is great. And actually, that's actually George knowing how conventions are run. Because frequently, when you have a new person doing a new convention every year, they get, as programming or as the chair, depending upon who's actually able to do this, they get one shot to bring in their one guest. And that's basically what they're going to get. Now, it might be a great convention and everybody loves it and they get a chance to do it in like 2 or 3 years from now. But the first time or a time when you're actually doing programming and you're actually the chair, there are conventions where they wouldn't mind having George, but there'd be a little, resentment going in the back. Oh, I don't get to have my person. I've always wanted to bring in, X. So I was able to go, no, we got it. Okay. And actually, at that point, I was going, I hope I'm not getting catfished. I hope I'm not getting catfished. Because I'm sending out, because he was a TusCon guest of honor in the 70s, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a 20-year-old CompuServe email address that he's replying to.
I'm unfamiliar with the term.
Catfished? Catfishing is when you're talking to somebody on the internet and they want to form a romantic relationship with you, but really they come up with an alternative identity. So you're not actually...
Thank God that's never happened to me.
Okay,
So it's like
Never.
Yeah, I got it.
It's the old bait and switch.
Yeah,
so
it's
it's
bait and switch.
the old bait and switch.
Well, it's kind of like, the opposite of trolling, because they aren't actually interested in doing something, but they're just not who they say they are.
I get it.
Although sometimes they're just interested in making your life miserable or trying to get money from you.
Yeah, I
But-
think they have some reality show now called Catfish, is where it came
It's on
from.
MTV. Yeah.
Yeah.
Figures.
But so
They have
anyway,
music videos. That would be a great idea.
Jeez.
so when we got George, we said, okay, we decided that several years from now, 500's it. Now we sold out that 500 a whole lot quicker than we thought we were going to. We were thinking, oh well, maybe we'll hit it,
Close to the
September,
convention.
October. You know, maybe we'll sell our last few, you know, like a weekend before the convention.
Not in July.
Because, you know, we were getting better at Facebook and Twitter. We were, you know, we had George.
Creating the buzz.
So, creating the buzz. So there was a lot of, you know, just boom, boom, boom all the way through. But going back to the differences between small conventions and big conventions and where they're going is, as you said earlier, originally the science fiction conventions were created so that people who had the same interests that nobody else in the world had would be able to get together, meet kindred spirits, and be able to actually feel like they were able to talk about what they wanted to talk about
And they weren't alone.
and that they weren't alone.
Like the pony cons.
They're still up. Sorry, I kid. Sorry.
Okay, Clown Splooge Conference. Just saying. I'm sure there's got to be one.
What is it? Rule 38?
Yeah.
Okay. So now with the internet, okay, you can talk to people that have not just the general interest in science fiction, but any particular show that either is still on TV or has been on TV has some type of fan group that you can talk about. There is, I mean, you know, the TV networks talk about how there's no mass media anymore because it's also fragmented. It goes down even to the fragmented media is not a whole media anymore because of the genres and subgenres, because of the each individual series that goes on.
Steampunk vampires.
Steampunk vampires.
Lucy. They actually have Lucy conventions. Lucille Ball conventions.
Oh, I thought you were
That's
talking
been
about
going
the
on
Peanuts
for
character.
years.
I know.
Years.
I know. But remember when it was just Star Trek convention? They still have them, but now all of those have grown into the Comic-Cons and everything.
They're
Except for-
big.
except
They're
for the actual
Sherlock.
creation.
Millions of years ago, I went to a science fiction convention and met Isaac Asimov.
Mm-hmm.
Same
You
here.
know, yeah, and I think they showed a trailer with a 16 millimeter, you know, projector of Tron or something like that. You know, I mean,
Arthur C. Clarke on the first video phone conference because he was way over in Sri Lanka and he wasn't going to go anywhere.
there you go. Yeah,
Well-
he didn't like to travel much, but you know, this. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
But now there's a con for everything. They've got a Stargate con. They've got a Farscape con. They've got, you know, every science fiction. They've got they probably have one for CSI, for crying out loud. You
Actually,
know?
they do.
They do. There you go. You know,
You can go to a con every weekend.
huh?
Cosplay is easy.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah,
before.
yeah. Well,
And not just
yeah.
no. It's not just a con every weekend. There are more than one con every weekend.
Yeah,
It's hard to schedule a con now.
it is.
Now it's stepping on
Yeah.
somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I'm the con chair for RenCon,
Okay.
and the gaming convention. It's
Wow.
hard to find a weekend.
Gaming convention get overrun by just a gaming store in that town.
Mhm.
They hold
Yeah.
they hold a convention or a contest in their store the
Mhm.
weekend before your convention, and your convention's blown. For a
Depends
gaming
on-
event.
Depends on your-
it's
depends
about-
on your
it's about-
convention.
It's about
Depends
synergy
on-
with the brick and mortars.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about showing everybody that it makes sense for all of us to come to the table and to come together and do things together.
So I feel like I've kind of been monopolizing the discussion. Do you want to say something? Or
Well, like I was talking about that Mad Monster Party up in
Mhm.
Scottsdale, they're limited to 1,000.
okay.
So it's kind of like here, but just
Right.
a little bit bigger. They're in a casino, so I'm sure there's
Uh-huh.
some money going involved. And I think the reason they managed to get people like Malcolm McDowell,
Uh-huh.
George Romero is hey, come out, you can stay at this casino for a weekend, like a
Right.
vacation, you know. So
Well, actually, the way that they're able to do it is that they have the 1,000, and they're able to. I assume that there was those autographs and photos.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens with the autographs and photos is that the convention actually has to guarantee that the star will make a certain amount. Okay. I have heard, I do not know the specifics of this, but I have heard that the average mid-level star is a $5,000 guarantee for the weekend.
Well, if you really use Shatner, you charge $100 a picture there, and
Well,
Probably
but
that's not
actually,
to take a
William-
picture with him. That's actually to buy a freaking picture that he can autograph.
But on the
And
other
then
hand,
another
with
100
but on
for
the
the
other
picture.
hand with
Yes,
William,
yeah. for the
but on the
picture.
other hand with William Shatner,
Yeah.
he is able to sell a single ticket to hear him speak for 90 minutes in a theater
Oh, yeah.
for
horses.
$65.
Oh, I know. Yeah. sure.
Okay, and
Yeah.
fill out and sell out
You know.
500
Yeah.
theater.
You know, I
In a
wouldn't
small
go
little town?
see Act of God over at over at the Arizona Theater Company because it was only a 90-minute show, and they were charging $45 to $50 a ticket to see something for 90 minutes. It's like, no way.
You know,
You know,
so Shatner's also a little
unless
bit.
Rush was on stage.
So Shatner's a little bit different that way.
Yeah.
But the guarantees go up from there. Okay, there is a limit to how many pictures and autographs you can do in a particular period of time, which limits how much the guarantee can be for. There is already talk of saturation because a lot of the again, when I'm talking about mid-level Comic-Cons, and by mid-level Comic-Cons, I'm talking 50,000 people. Okay,
Like
can't
TCC.
like
TCC?
no. TCC was maybe like 5,000 or how many?
There were like 15 or 20.
They were 15, 20
Oh, 15 or
This
20.
year.
this
Okay,
year.
well, this year because
Well,
they
but
had
that also
Marina,
counts.
they had Marina Sirtis, and they also had Casper Van Dien.
Okay,
Yeah, they're
But-
getting that.
they
Yes,
are
Thursday.
working their
They're
way
working
up.
their way up to it. Yeah, they have a new ownership
Mhm.
running it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the conventions that are like 50,000, from what I've heard, that's like a Kansas City level.
Okay.
It's like
That sounds
Tennessee
more
level. Are having a lot of problems because there's so many Comic-Cons out there, and the stars are now used to being able to collect that amount of money for the conventions. That if they guess wrong and guarantee the money to the wrong people, they can lose their convention in 1 year because it's an all-cash business, and it's 1 year, and you're rolling the dice. And if you have a storm that weekend, or if there's something else going on that's big, if you're having problems in one way or the other, one bad year and you're just
Dead.
done.
DUD dead.
Just done. And because there's this inflation of and because there's only so many actors, and the actors only want to spend so much time on the road, because it's not just a 1 hour flight from LA. They are upping. They are both upping the guarantees, and they are both having to draw a lower level of celebrity. Okay.
Two questions related to what you're talking about. I mean, has there been what you would call a mid-level con that has crashed and burned like this and doesn't exist anymore? You spend years building up. It sounds like TCC is starting to get somewhere. You know, not that there'd be room for 50,000.
Not currently in this cycle, although from what I understand, Kansas City was real close to going bust. But it happened 20 years ago to Creation Con.
Okay, and then
It happened
Another
10.
question.
It happened 10 years ago to what was that other media con? They tried to like franchise from city to city, and they I forget the name of it.
Well,
But 10 years ago, there was somebody tried to franchise a convention and basically pick 12 cities, do one convention 1 month in one city, and try and get the same, big stars. From a business standpoint, it kind of works, but it was too difficult to control the local hotels. It was too difficult to get into the different media markets. Very few of the groups that would be buying those tickets wanted to support them, because even the for-profit cons use so much volunteer labor that as an the actual business model of Comic-Cons does not work without volunteers and volunteer labor.
isn't that
No,
you have to pay minimum wage?
no, not if you're not paying them anything.
Phoenix Comic Con is mostly staff.
Yeah,
Well, but Phoenix Comic Con uses so the for-profit hires a non-profit to run the volunteers.
Right.
Oh, okay.
That's how they get around.
That's
how they get around the
as
you
a
have to
profit
pay.
organization.
Okay.
Having volunteer labor that they don't have to pay.
Are more stars also using certain talent agencies?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. There-
Heroes,
most-
Heroes for
middleman to
Hire
be
is
big
one of
show.
them. Erin Gray
Uh-huh.
actually has an agency, and she calls people up, says, "Hey, what about doing?"
Most stars actually have separate agents for bookings at this point, because it's such a different animal than like scripts and things. A lot of stars who are at that level just have a different agent for that. As the programming person, I get a lot of the emails. Hey, have third zombie on the right come to your convention.
Literally.
I had one. That is only half of the joke. He had a name. He basically was third zombie on the right for Walking Dead, but he's been in a lot of separate episodes. Okay, he's one of the named zombies.
Stock zombie.
Okay. And we get, and I get a bunch of them. Heroes for Hire is one of them. I want to say Platinum something. Anyway, there's a lot of different organizations and agencies that are doing it.
Now, is that really going to be a bad thing or a good thing, really, when you think about it? Because one thing it does do is provide a central point if you want to get a bunch of different stars together. You go to this one person and they can say, okay, for this amount, we can get you this, and this. Instead of having to go to individual talent agencies
Or individual stars.
stars.
It also means that star's more likely to show up.
Right. He's contracted.
Because if he doesn't show up to that talent agency, you go back to the talent agency and say, you said they were going to be there.
Right.
And then that talent agency stops using them as much.
Right. And you basically, if you blow 1 or 2 appearances in a row like that, they sit there and go, "You'll never work in this town again." And they can actually have that kind of clout. Back, 20, 30 years ago, I had a friend of mine who bragged that he actually had William Shatner's private phone number in his Rolodex, because he was a programming manager for KZAZ, local Fox affiliate, and he actually had to interview Shat over the phone, so he actually had his private phone number. So, and he, of course, kept a hang on it. But that was the way you did things back then. You know, you knew somebody who knew somebody who knew, and they set it up, and you talked. Nowadays, that really doesn't happen anymore. And I kind of miss having that intimate kind of relationship with a big name, but I also kind of like that guarantee that, yeah, they're going to be there. Unlike a certain Chris Doohan we could talk about.
Which we're not going to.
Thank you. Talk to me later if you want to hear about it. You have to talk.
It won't be a happy story. He'll be happy to talk about it. And so, changing the subject really quickly. What it allows people to do is it allows, like I said earlier, people who are not necessarily able to make an entire salary from acting still be able to make money off of the things that they did.
The not so starving actor.
The not so starving, because again, most of these actors that are doing the circuit are the underneath the top billing actors. So they're not getting residuals. They're not getting anything from the series anymore. The only thing that they actually have is that they did it. And part of the problem is that they can't necessarily get new jobs because everybody knows them as, whatever their character was.
From the left. Yeah. The sheer stereotyping you saw in the industry will pretty much completely kill an actor unless they try to break out of it. As an example, James Doohan could never break out of the mold of being Scotty. Leonard Nimoy broke out of the mold of being Spock.
Oh, yeah. Which is actually an interesting story because, if anybody knows the backstory on James Doohan, he was one of the first people that actually had an active career as a voice actor. He was doing a lot of different accents, a lot of different people. If you would have said there's, who would be of the cast, who would be the one person who would not be able to be stereotyped?
Him.
It would be him, because if you look at the things that he did beforehand, none of them are like Scotty. And actually, I don't think you could do a Scotty now because at the time it was actually racist to have the Irishman engineer. It's a stereotype. Scottish, right? Sorry, the Scottish engineer.
And how many different voices did he do on the animated series, right?
Right. On the original series, he actually did a lot of the.
Look him up on IMDb.
Yeah.
Have all the listing on there.
You remember the captain of the spaceship Thesaurus, the big glowing thing? He was the voice of the head, and you would not recognize the voice at all.
So he was a good voiceover actor?
Oh, yeah.
Marvelous voiceover actor.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, he was actually really upset that they made him do a really bad Scottish accent because that was one of the things that he couldn't do very well.
Terrible.
He said, "You want me to do what?"
But he did come up and say, "Well, if you're going to have an engineer, you better make him a Scot." So he kind of set himself up.
Yeah.
I think he was hoping not to play the role, but anyway. Of course, it's hard to imagine
anyone else. Yeah.
But now, one of the things we also have a problem with is the small conventions are dying.
Yes.
Yeah. Small conventions are dying away.
We've seen that in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've seen it with Leprechaun and CopperCon, which is a crying shame because they were great conventions.
Well, Leprechaun has a WesterCon coming up, so they're going to be around for at least 4 or 5 more years.
But but the point is they're relying on a big convention to fund their small convention, and I think personally a lot of it. I work with a lot of different convention committees, in a variety of formats, not just sci-fi conventions. That if you grow too big too soon, you push the envelope too hard, you find yourself so far in debt you go bankrupt. And that's the same thing that you see this even in small conventions because they're trying to compete for those fan dollars with a Comic-Con, even if it's a regional Comic-Con, and then so local, that there's only so much dollars to go around. And if I want to save, I could spend $200 at a TusCon and have a really good time. Or if I save my money, I can have $700 and go to Phoenix Comic Con and have a wonderful time.
Well, I also think a lot of younger people go to just one con because that's all they can afford.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're going to do that, you're going to go to the one big one.
They're getting expensive. They are.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Well,
And not only
another-
that, but you have to pay. If you want to go there just to see celebrities, you're going to have to pay a lot of money. It's just
So that way everybody
Yeah.
a group and everyone they got
There's no special.
Well, but another
prices for
another one of the problems is again going back to the original reason for science fiction conventions has basically been eliminated. Okay, the originating reason for people of a general nature to come together because that's all there was is gone.
So that brings up an interesting question, because a lot of people are showing up at these cons just because it's the place to be now.
Yeah.
And do you think that will go away over time, and maybe
It depends on the convention.
Yeah.
Because even though somebody might show up because it's the place to be, they won't show up 2 years
Yeah,
from now.
exactly. Yeah.
I kind of wonder whether or not maybe some of those cons are beginning to kind of hit peak.
It's
just starting. Might start declining.
They might start declining. A lot of it has to do with some of the underlying fan organizations underneath it. I don't know enough about the organizational setup of the 501st or the Avengers United, I think it's called, the Marvel superhero cosplay people.
I don't know much about 501st. I think it's a very, very loose group.
Nope. Right. But there's a lot of the cosplay go to the Comic-Cons because there's so many people who can see them. At any convention, there's going to be somewhere between 10 and 15% of the people who show up in costume. Now, TusCon, we have 500 people, so there might be 50. In a convention, you'll go, oh, that's a nice outfit. Oh, that's a nice outfit.
Oh, steampunk.
Steampunk.
Yeah, it's very common.
As well. Phoenix, 100,000 people.
Yeah.
You're talking about 10,000 costumes. And you go, oh, look, there's 6 Deadpools.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Harley Quinn.
There's quite a third of our
I would go just to pick out Yaya. Where is she?
Now, mind you, a lot of the Deadpools are just wearing the costume because it's easy and it's fun.
Or see Victoria Page.
But a significant portion of the people who are wearing the Deadpool costume is because they really like the Deadpool attitude. Okay? And like I said, I go to Phoenix Comic-Con. I think it's an incredible convention. I think it does what it does really well. And it's the small moments that just really make me go, oh my God, this could not happen someplace else. So I'm going to the convention center, waiting for the light to change with a fairly decent sized crowd, and there's not really traffic. It's in one of the places where there should actually be traffic. It's not blocked off or anything, And all of a sudden, I hear "Ooh, I'm going to break the law." And there's this Deadpool high-stepping in, the way that Deadpool is drawn across the street because he's breaking the law, crossing against the light. Mind you, we all saw that there were no, cars there, but it's just, and just going, yeah, it's Deadpool. It's the character. It's, there was that, there was this glee in his voice because that wasn't something that he thought he was going to do. He was just this guy in this Deadpool costume that said, "Oh, this would be funny."
5-minute warning.
Okay.
So also the nature of the way they have the costumes, you could go there with an idea of a costume, go there and in 10 minutes throw out $500 and walk out in the costume.
Yeah.
Because if they got a lot of pre-made they press buttons and things are coming to their house the next day. They get it instantly by walking around and for 5 minutes.
I won't say that. I won't. Yeah, I won't say that. I won't say that certain people don't do that, but I will say that a large majority of the costumes are more well thought out than that.
Oh yeah, people spend the whole year crafting their costumes.
Yeah, and not just the costume, but the attitude that they want to do with the costume. We've got a panel, I think it's tomorrow, it might be Sunday, about original design, I think it's called, for costumes, where you're doing, are you doing an exact representation of that hero, or are you doing some type of version or your idea of that version of that hero
that's still recognizable.
That's still and a lot of it actually goes into how far can I push it and still get the concept of that hero? What's it called? Cross cosplay. Where you're taking a male or female gender swapping characters.
Is there a place for original design and cosplay?
Yes.
Like it's on. I saw it. Yes. That's Sunday at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's the same people who did the, or at least some of the same people. The costuming panel this morning. So
we this year we have 5 or 6 people who are very into cosplay that we're kind of shuffling around. Because cosplay, and this is again something that you get with the smaller conventions, is that, and that TusCon specifically does, that I feel the Phoenix convention specifically did not do enough of, and is one of the reasons why they aren't doing as well, is that TusCon has always tried to reach out to whatever new sub-genre fans that are out there and make them not just welcome at TusCon, but actively try and recruit them to say, no, we are interested in what you're doing. We want to know what you're doing, and we want you to come and have fun with us and show us what you're doing. And some of those people like TusCon and stay. Some of the people, just do their own thing, which is fine. But then they actually know about TusCon. So if somebody that they're talking to might be interested in you like TusCon.
RickRunCon's doing the same thing. We're picking a theme per year. This year's steampunk, next year's superheroes.
Right.
So
with TusCon, we don't usually try and do a specific theme because we're trying to just see. And again, we've been doing this for 43 years. So, TusCon, to the best of my knowledge, had the first LARPs in the area.
Yes.
Okay? And then other conventions say, hey, people come because there's a LARP. We should have a LARP. TusCon had did not have the first steampunks. We were behind on that.